Hey folks, it's Sam, and I'm doing this video, sort of quick video here about the very tragic and sad and terrible situation that we've seen with the young lady Gabby Petito, who disappeared a couple months ago now. It seems that maybe her uh, last days were perhaps a couple months ago, but her body was just recently discovered. It's been quite a phenomena, and she was someone who was traveling with her boyfriend in a van and chronicling her journey on Instagram. And I believe it was in early September, a few weeks ago, I think like around the 10th or 11th, she was reported missing. And then they realized that her boyfriend that she'd been traveling with had returned home to his parents' house with her van and all this. So I actually found the birth charts. We don't have the times, but we do have enough to be able to look and see what happened. And it's a very sensitive subject. So, it's a very tragic thing, but it's also, we could learn a bit about astrology and even the recent transits and the recent things that, by the way, I spoke about quite a lot around July and August. This is when people speculate, especially online, that her last posts, like to Instagram, were around the end of July. I'm going to pull up the screenshot and show you that. But I want to look at the transits. I also want to look at her chart. I also have his chart. He's now also on the run. He's disappeared. And again, we don't have accurate birth times for either one, at least not rectified. I've instinctively looked at a couple of birth times, and so we're going to go through that. But first, again, just tragic situation. Sometimes these things are hard to get through a little bit, because, obviously just a lovely young girl, young lady. I don't want to use the wrong terminology here, but lovely young lady. And, there was the video, the police video of the body cam video where they've obviously had some fights and there's a lot of distress, and, it's hard to watch. She's apologizing, saying things about her ADD and crying, and it's very hard to watch. Hard to watch the interactions with her and the male police officers, and then with the male police officers and the guy Brian. It's just hard to watch all around. By the way, I'll just say this as an aside. It's also hard to watch by comparison because we're used to seeing police body cam footage now of them beating a black man who's begging for his life. So it was also a contrast to watch. Oh, again, I don't want to bring race and all these charged things into it, but here's how they treat white people. Here's how they treat black people. I just can't help but thinking, even if it was a black couple, I wonder how that interaction would have also went down. But we'll save that for another day. But by the way, I also think that the cops, you could tell they were trying to be nice in the situation, however you want to interpret it. And again, all things considered, it's hard to watch on every level, of course, because of her sadness also, but she was wound up being like, well, we're not going to charge you for assault. It's just, the whole thing was like, very cringeworthy on so many levels. And so this is very, hard to speak about. But why it's instructive to me and why I thought I would speak about it is because especially a couple months ago in the July and August forecast, especially, I was talking about all of these oppositions. I even taught a course on it at the time because I had the course that I taught was on literally like the hidden rage and projection and, again, toxic oppositions that can come in relationships and again, because of all of the, all of the toxic potential that was actually happening at that time. And it's this time. This is the chart here. This was the transit chart. This was in early August. Like if we go back a few days, people think that her last post to Instagram, people think that her last post to Instagram was on like the 26th. I'll go back and show, but if on July like 26th or something. But look at all these oppositions. We have this Saturn Sun opposition in the sky, and it was right on her. It was on her natal Rahu Ketu, right? Forget this ascend. This is a hypothetical ascendant. I think my two hypothetical ascendants were either Capricorn or also Pisces. One of these two, I think. Again, it's hypothetical, but instinctively I thought just when I saw this that this was a person who maybe had a Capricorn ascendant. That was before I even saw the chart and saw that Ketu would have been here in Capricorn at this time. But again, I went back and looked, and look at these transits here. This is all these oppositions. Saturn exactly opposite the Sun. We also have this. This is right when Mars had just went into Leo as well. Mars and Venus had been tracking for months. This is right when Mars and Venus had gone into Leo. This is the time that a lot of people, especially on the Instagram, speculate that maybe this is when her death perhaps occurred, was around this time, because this was when it seemed to be her last posts were around this time. And Jupiter, again, we have Jupiter is also opposite Mars here. So you see this exact opposition, Mars, Venus, and then Jupiter opposite here. And then Saturn opposite the Sun and also Mercury. So these big oppositions were there, and her nodal axis was right there. And so, again, if we look at her chart, we have a lot of Pisces energy, of course, Sun, Mercury, Jupiter, Moon. In Pisces, the moon is very dark, right? It's waxing moon, but it would be the second tithi. It'd be on Dvitya, and it's in Revati Nakshatra. Again, very much this sort of nakshatra of like liberation and a kind of gentle nature. It's about the divine. It's about the shepherd, and that sort of humanitarian. Same way with Uttarabhadra. She's got 3 planets in Uttarabhadra as well, which is very much about service. Again, humanitarianism, wanting to be of service to others. She also has debilitated Saturn with Venus. Again, this is also which might bode with this ascendant, perhaps being Capricorn and debilitated ascendant lord. But it's also again, so she's got Mercury debilitated as well, and Saturn. But this Venus is also joined the debilitated Saturn. So one of the things about when you push, well, let me just do the chart here a little more, and then I'll do the potential logness here. But we also have Mars opposite the debilitated Saturn and opposite the Venus. So again, you see this intense opposition here, right? So these are the transits of around that time. Again, of course, we have Saturn going through Capricorn. Jupiter was retrograde up here. Then by the time the disappearance was reported, if we go forward, this is the end of July. Then we go into August. So all of this time, I guess he was coming back. I don't know the timeline as well as maybe some, but her disappearance was reported in early September. I think it was even September 10th or 11th by her parents. By that time, Jupiter had gone back into, or had just kind of right around this time, Jupiter has gone back into Capricorn now. Once it started to become like news and like newsworthy, Jupiter had also gone back into Capricorn with Saturn. And again, so many speculate and theorize that perhaps her demise was at least around this time, if not earlier, like around the end of July. So if I'm going to move the birth chart up a little bit, I'm going to change this increment and do it on the birth chart. But if we have like the Capricorn, it's going to be a Venus Mahadasha pretty much regardless. So I see some comments going on with Heidi and Roxanne. I'm going to get to them in a second, okay? And Heidi's probably, okay, she maybe knows some more things that I do, but okay, so, well, I'm just going to go through with some of this here, and then we'll get to maybe some comments and whatnot here. But if we look at the ascendant as being Capricorn, for example, then it would be Venus-Jupiter, which would have like started in April when she perhaps set out on the trek, right? And again, that would also put these transits right in the 1st and 7th house axis. Again, that was my instinct before I even drew up the chart. I thought, I wonder if, because I saw her photo, and again, I just thought, I wonder if this is a Capricorn ascendant. Again, you can see there's heaviness there, even in her nature, but then when we pull up the chart also, we see all this Pisces, which is not surprising. And either way, however, regardless of what the ascendant, Saturn by transit is aspecting all these planets in Pisces by transit. Aspects by transit are really overlooked. They're really overlooked. They are huge. Not only that, but again, Heidi just made a comment that said it's looking at the end of August would have been when she was killed, perhaps. Again, so that would have moved Mars still around the end here. So Mars would have, that whole time, Mars would have been aspecting these planets in her 1st house as well. So this is a case study in aspects by transit. Mars isn't just opposite Jupiter, but Mars is aspecting Pisces. And here at the end of July, Mars is 5 degrees. So at the end of July, Mars is hitting these aspects, and then he's going to work through and hit every one of these aspects. If you watch as we go forward, well, let me first move her birth chart forward to go to Pisces and watch the dashas change. So again, now if we move up here, especially if we get to the end of Pisces, see, okay, if we're at the end of Pisces, now she would have started Venus-Saturn at the end of July. So if the dashas move to the end of Pisces, or if the ascendant is end of Pisces, then Venus-Saturn starts at the end of July, right? 2021. So that would mean, and again, that also puts this Mars in the 8th in the natal chart, opposite here, and 8th house planets become much more important in the natal chart. Let me shift this though and look at the animated transits, especially of Mars, and watch Mars. This is the end of July. And you look at these degrees in Pisces. Mars is going to hit, again, it already has hit the sun. Let me go back days here. So if I go back a few days, so here on July 25th, Mars is aspecting 3 degrees of Pisces. She's got her sun at 4 degrees Pisces. So just watch Mars aspect hit all of those planets as we go through end of July into August. Now here Mars is 10 degrees. He's moving up. Now he's aspecting her natal Jupiter, right? As we keep going, Mars will eventually move into aspecting her natal moon. But as we see these planets shift, this Mars aspect, 8th house aspect onto Pisces, and all those planets in Pisces become really important. Again, remember, Saturn is also aspecting these planets in Pisces. And then the Mars aspects by transit are also hitting all of those planets in Pisces as we get through August. So you could see all of that potential for violence. And by the way, the aspects show what they show. Mars casts a 4th house aspect and an 8th house aspect, and they're different. 8th house aspect is 8th house. So you can see, again, regardless of which ascendant we have, that these Mars aspects particularly are very difficult, obviously. So it's hitting all of those on our natal chart. And So again, this makes rectifications difficult because you don't, it takes a long time, but even if you don't have it, you can, when you see something like this, you have a lot of information just with the natal chart and the transits, and especially these aspects by transit. And someone is saying the nodes do not aspect. If you're thinking they do, I don't think they aspect. I don't think it's astrologically sound at all, because it's not a graha drishti. There's no drishti on an eclipse point. It's not giving light anywhere. Okay, so no to nodal aspects. Just don't think it. I don't think it at all. I think it's a mistake. So again, the difference is the bodies of light, the planets of light, are looking and seeing there. That's what a drishti is. It's light in a different direction. Whereas the node isn't light. It's a harmonic point of convergence between the sun, moon, and earth. It's a shadow point sitting there waiting for something to energize it. How is that casting a drishti? Doesn't make sense. So I'm not going to debate it so much, but that's my view, and I think it's astronomically and ontologically sound. So anyway, we see, without a doubt, the drishti of Mars, 8th house, onto all of these planets. So these are the things that I definitely notice about her chart. Okay, so this is that shows the danger, whether we know the ascendant or not. So these are the things that I was looking at, though. If we have the ascendant in Capricorn, then again, Saturn's not only going through the first house, but it's going over the Ketu and all of those aspects we just saw by transit. Particularly that Sun-Saturn aspect by transit is in her 1st and 7th house. That's the relationship house that shows the danger coming. Also, the sun is the 8th lord, and also all those planets like we have right here. This is also what is compelling for the transits from Capricorn, is that then all of these transits I'm talking about that happened at the end of July and August are going through her 8th house. So now all of these transits, like this Mars, is going through her 8th house from Capricorn, aspecting all of these planets. Again, if it's Pisces, then they're aspecting the 1st house and all the planets there. So I suspect it's one of these two ascendants. At least the timing really works well for that. It might not be, though. It's very tricky. It can work from any place, frankly, because of what we're looking at with the transits as well. So again, this is compelling. Now, I want to look at his chart here. And this is his chart. Again, we don't have the birth time. One of the reasons that also gave me a hunch once I did look at it of a Capricorn ascendant is that would put his Jupiter in her 1st house. I've seen many, many times, particularly when someone has a malefic in the 1st house, like if it's Capricorn, she'd have Ketu there. His Jupiter there is going to feel good. It's like, Jupiter is here. Even if it's debilitated Jupiter, whatever, Jupiter still feels like Jupiter. Someone has their Jupiter in your 1st house or on your moon or whatever, it still feels like Jupiter is there, and it gives me a sense of hope. It gives me a sense of, okay, I'll follow this person, right? Because this is a big part of what Jupiter is, where we follow that thing. And again, women also are very prone to the man's Jupiter because, again, it's that vision that the man has. We also see this for sure. Again, forget the ascendant there. I'll just move it out of there because I don't want to have the ascendant there right now, but because I don't know if that's the case at all. But his Saturn is right on all of her planets. This is, these are the natal charts. His Saturn is on her moon, Jupiter, Mercury, and sun. So where she's got all those planets in Pisces, his Saturn is there. Now, again, people who've heard me do relationship astrology have heard me say this now over and over again, is that Saturn connections are a very, very strong glue. Okay? Saturn is kind of like the sun, where, for example, especially when you see a man's sun on a woman's moon, it's very compelling because it shows this kind of support and this power. But Saturn also feels a lot like the sun. So a man's Saturn on a woman's moon also feels very supportive. It means that the man's energy and sense of, purpose and commitment, which is Saturn, is going to be on the woman's moon, and she'll feel it. She'll feel his commitment, his dedication. But it's Saturn, so it feels like control. It also feels like control, and something that's more paternal and more authoritative and more domineering and all of that kind of stuff that Saturn does. So you can see his Saturn right on her, all those planets, those 4 planets, and how compelling that would be, especially close to her moon. It's closest to her moon and also Jupiter. It's not so far. It kind of splits the difference. It's 20. So it's actually closer to her Jupiter, which is at 27. Oh, yeah. Or no. Her Jupiter is at 14 and her moon is at 28. So this is at 20. So it's kind of right in the middle, a little closer to her Jupiter, but it's still right there. And again, when you look at her chart, she's got Jupiter in Pisces. Again, the ruler is there. So you can see in her videos, you can see all that Pisces energy, that kind of free, like sweet, loving, connected energy there. She's got Jupiter in Pisces. Again, it's with debilitated Mercury, but it's also with the moon. The moon in Pisces, Jupiter, moon. Also Mercury and Sun is there. So there's all that power. And again, this is what gives me the idea that maybe it's Pisces, because she has a lot of presence. She kind of carries herself much more kind of like a Pisces. When you see her, it's like you could easily think Pisces more than Capricorn for sure. If she's Capricorn, she'd have K2 in the first. And again, so this is why these two are the two that seem the most. But you could see her, and again, anytime the Sun is in the first house, Sun in the first is like very empowered. The moon is also there. Jupiter is there. Mercury is there too. And you saw how incoherent she was when she was crying. Again, this is also a very much a case study of a debilitated Mercury. You could see where she was even saying things like, it was not really coherent what she was saying. She was saying things like her OCD, which probably wasn't a literal diagnosis. By the way, I've seen charts with OCD and I don't think this is it. I don't think she literally has OCD. She was using that as a kind of adjective, not as a diagnosis, for example. But you could see how like she wasn't really making a lot of sense when she was talking. That's very much Mercury debilitated, is when we get emotional. We can't really think so clearly. And so, of course, in that moment, there was a lot going on. And so the other thing that really that makes me think Pisces is because Mercury then becomes the 7th lord. And it's a debilitated retrograde 7th lord here. And then the other kark of Venus is, again, with a debilitated Saturn. That's going to be in either chart. So again, this was a kind of a, one way or the other, but having the 7th lord in the first, debilitated retrograde in the first. Again, it's also highly combust here. It's retrograde and combust, so you can almost forget the retrograde, but it's also joined the Lagna lord. Again, when you get the 1st and the 7th house lord joined, it often joins our nature to the partner, and we lose ourselves in it. We lose the kind of boundaries with the partner. So again, this is why in many ways, as far as reading the person, the Pisces seems to make more sense as reading the person, and also how the dashas then change if we get to the end of Pisces. It was also, Heidi also said that later in the day it becomes an Aries moon, which I don't think Aries moon. I think the moon is Pisces. I don't think it winds up being Aries and Ashwini. It just doesn't seem, to me, my instinct is these two. It certainly could be, though. I'm definitely not disputing that. But my instinct is more that this is a Pisces moon just because of her nature. She seems much more Piscean than having an Aries fiery moon. Maybe I'm wrong. So again, this is always the thing about with a rectification. It takes a lot of time and you need a lot of data, but on the fly, this is what I've picked out. And again, so these transits have shown really shown this story of her peril. When we look at him, we can also see what happens is his nodal axis is here. So now we look at the transits from his nodal axis. He also has this same Venus-Mars conjunction in his chart, right? He has the Venus-Mars in his chart here. And we also had this Venus-Mars going through Leo. It's a recurrence transit for him because he has the Venus-Mars conjunction. And so it's a recurrence transit for him. And so, again, that's also significant. When you get any kind of conjunctions in your natal chart that return in the sky, it's like a reset of that. Even though it's not in the same signs, it's the same conjunction. And so, again, this is a crucial time. And I think Heidi's right, because especially if anyone has researched it, which I haven't, I just looked at when people thought the last of her posts came. People on Instagram had thought that her last post was the end of July, right? And then post that came after was him posting. I took that to mean, like, if he's posting from her account and she's not alive anymore, that seems a little weird. So end of July, I thought maybe that's when it happened. And that really tracks with this Sun-Saturn opposition and this this Mars-Venus opposite Jupiter. So if we run these transits, so we don't have a birth time on him. But let me change the transits to the day here. So again, also when we look at his chart, the other thing that's important is the nodal axis in the sky. Okay, he has the Sun in Scorpio, Mercury in also in Scorpio in Jeshta. So again, I don't know. Somebody can put when they started their adventure, which I don't know when that happened. I don't know when they started their adventure, but again, you could see he just had a Mercury transit here. Okay, this would have been earlier this year, January. So now we're at so it would have been 21 or so, like in February, right? So he's getting this transit here, again, of the nodal axis going through Scorpio, of Ketu going through Scorpio. Okay, it says, so they started July 2nd. Okay, so that's when they started. Thank you. Okay, so again, but either way, Ketu is going through or going over his Sun Mercury by transit, and Saturn is going over his debilitated Jupiter. That's the biggest transit for him, because what happened is, if we go back, Saturn went up right to his, so Saturn goes up to his, right up to his natal Jupiter and turns retrograde. Right here at the end of May, Saturn it went up to his debilitated Jupiter and then started to go retrograde here. So again, that's right around the time Jupiter also turned retrograde. It was in the same sign as his Ketu, but not so exact. But again, now we can see, if we're here, that, okay, this is through, again, this is the middle of August, and we can see that in the sky for him, Saturn is still, his transits are less dynamic here. Saturn, or I'm sorry, if we look at Mars, Mars isn't, Mars is actually going to hit his Saturn by aspect. This is what I want to look at. Okay, that would be this week. This would be August 19th. So this would be a big, okay, so, all right, a couple things. Now, here's the transits here. Okay, on August 19th, Mars is 19. It's putting a 4th house aspect on his natal Mercury and an 8th house aspect on his natal Saturn. Look at this degree. Look at how Mercury and Saturn are almost the exact same degree, 20 and 21. And Mars is aspecting both of them from Leo on the 19th. So Mars aspect by transit onto his natal Mercury and his natal Saturn on that time. So that same aspect we just looked at to Gabby's chart with all those planets to Pisces, it's hitting his Saturn at the same time, especially around the middle of August. So I bet you're going to find that this is when, and at the same time, it's like, it had just, it was bearing down, getting closer. or it had passed over her Jupiter at that time. And maybe her ascendant would be around that degree if we were to tweak this time a little bit. Anyway, I do these things. I realize, I'm talking about such a grisly, horrible thing. And, forgive if this comes off as being callous or something like that. But these are the things that we can maybe learn looking at stuff like this. If I'll go over that again if you're not seeing what I'm talking about. Mars casts a 4th house and an 8th house aspect. So here around the middle of August, end of August, these aspects, especially of Mars by transit, would have kicked in to his chart and his Mercury, Saturn. Now, again, we don't know what those planets rule in the natal chart because we don't have a birth time. And then also in her chart, all those planets in Pisces, Mars is casting an 8th house aspect. So then it continues here, and Mars joins, also gets very close to his nodes, which I didn't even mention. When it's there around this sort of 20 degrees, it's right on his nodal axis. It's right on his natal Rahu, opposite his natal Ketu. So again, this is a very crucial time here, the middle end of August for him. I bet we'll see that this is when we had, maybe we'll find that this is when he took her life. He's disappeared. It definitely looks like if he's not guilty, then it's hard to think who is at this point. Yeah, and then after that, these planets start going through Virgo, and he starts maybe plotting or planning and trying to cover things up and whatnot. So I was going to switch over to the Instagram, but I'm not going to do that. I was just going to show where at her Instagram account, it looked like there were people who have been really tracking this that said that it looked like her last post was the end of July. So anybody else here because I know Heidi was here before and others who want to comment on some of this that I had said, feel free to do that. Again, this is a bit spontaneous. I just pulled these charts up and again, I also was reminded of this because it's an illustration of what how you can read without dashas and whatnot, even when we're not sure. Again, because transits also show a whole lot, especially if you look at the aspects by transit and other things like that. But okay, doesn't look like anybody has much else to say. So anyway, God rest her soul, this young lady. We were, wondering what was going on. Oh, and someone said the police body cam footage was from August 12th. Thanks. I don't have the timelines. So August 12th would have been right around this time. August 12th would have been around this time. So again, that's when we're getting right. So this is when they had the domestic blow up. This is when they started having the problems, right? So anyway, folks, God rest the soul of this young lady and also this young man, Brian, for whatever has happened. His soul deserves solace and peace as well for whatever has happened, terrible as it may be. And so this is karma. It plays out, and it's sometimes really hard to take, but we can see it, and we can learn from things like this and grow in greater compassion as well. And hopefully this kind of sharing is beneficial. I don't want it to be sensationalized or anything like that. And I try to be respectful of what we're looking at here, but it's very, very sad. This young lady looked like she was such a bright spirit, and whatever he did, he was some version of trying to live the best life he could in some ways, but people have problems and are haunted, and whatever happens, again, we're not God. So anyway, you all have a good day.